Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our virtual contributors summit for Ansible. Would love to be doing this in person, but not an option at the moment. Hopefully next year we'll all get together somewhere in the world. Though the upside of that is that we can make this purely virtual, so give a hopefully better experience for everyone. I'm John Barker. I'm the manager of the Ansible community engineering team. In a moment I'll be joined by Carol Chen as well. I'm going to be just doing a slight host and introductions before we start on with the main session. I really want to say thank you everyone for taking time out of your days to join. I know life is busy, maybe meeting fatigue is getting to be a real thing. Today is really about you, not about us, it's about you, the community. We've had a lot of feedback from the previous contributor summits that we've done, where people want a place to be able to ask questions and training, understand how different ways that people can contribute to Ansible. So that's what we've put together today. We've got links that we're going to be using Matrix or IRC for chat. This link for that's on the next slide. That's also in the Eventbrite email that you would have seen, or if you're watching the YouTube recording, that's linked in the description of the video at the bottom. Over the next 4 days, we're also going to be having a hackathon. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on today. So for those of you joining live or watching the recorded YouTube session, please join us on Matrix. There's a link there at the top. It's a really nice chat platform. It's bridged to IRC, so if you do prefer using LibreChat, you can join us in the Ansible Conf channel there. Throughout today, and also Friday for day 2 of the Contributor Summit, please just keep the questions coming throughout the day. We've got a few people that are going to be keeping an eye on chat. Hopefully we can answer the questions in real time, otherwise we'll put them in the HackMD and go through them for each session. There is a slight delay on the video, about 20 to 30 seconds, so please do keep the questions coming and we'll make sure we get those answered. Just for the purpose of the record, as I said, this video is being recorded, and also Matrix and IRC are also being, the chat logs there are also being recorded. They'll be shared publicly with everyone that's attending, and also just the wider community at the end of the, probably by the end of next week, once we have time to process them. We really do want feedback from people. The community is what makes us stronger. So please do keep the topic questions coming through. So as we're an international community, we use UTC time for everything. So it is now 13:04 UTC. So as I said, I'm John Barker, John Goes Gundalo, just doing the overview and introduction. Very shortly, I'll be joined by Tadaboro, as you may know him from GitHub and IRC. He's going to do a walkthrough of how to set up your development environment and take questions as we go through that. Then we've got something that I'm particularly proud of my team for putting together. We've got some self-paced interactive lamps. I think we've got 5 of them at the moment. This is very similar to the Katacoda scenarios that we used before, but now we're using a much nicer platform called Instruct. This is a great platform where you can just sort of load up in a web browser, play around with something, and close your web browser at the end. So very safe place to learn. No chance of trashing your host operating system or breaking Python in a weird and wonderful way. This is a new thing that we've just launched, so we're really looking for feedback. It's a term I'm going to keep on using. But as a way to say thank you, we will be selecting 5 random people to give us feedback on Instruct to receive some special swag, probably some t-shirts, stickers, and different bits that most people don't normally get. Then we'll have a short break, and then we'll start on give you an overview of the hackathon. So thinking caps on and see if there's anything that maybe you've wanted to work on. Maybe there's a feature that you've been interested in adding to one of the collections, or maybe there's a bit of documentation that you think could be improved. We'll have people that will be able to help guide you through the process of creating a pull request, understanding if CI is failing, maybe Ansible Test throws up something. Although we said that this starts at 14:30, this will be running over the next 4 days. Obviously, the amount of people online will sort of vary as people try to sleep in beds occasionally, but should be a nice experience for everyone. So do have a think if there's any feature you want to work on. We've also got a HackMD with a set of ideas. We'll get that posted in the channel shortly. And I know some of you will be watching YouTube recording of this maybe a few days or weeks later. Although the hackathon will have ended, the same process will exist. Just come and join us on chat, and if you get stuck, and we can help. After that, we've got a session from Chilar from the cloud team here at Ansible, and David Samard from community engineering, doing a live Q&A about different questions you could ask a maintainer to try and understand what's involved there. There's different ways that you can help support Ansible or a particular collection or bit of a code, and being a maintainer is definitely one good way of doing that. That's the end of the formal agenda for today. After that, we're going to be around still. We'll be here to answer questions, support you with the hackathon. As I mentioned, the Instruct online training will be available till the end of time, so keep digging through that. If you get stuck, please ask questions, give us feedback. Hopefully we will have a lot of questions coming through throughout the day, so we'll maybe interject every so often with a roundup of the Q&A and sort of summarize any of the discussions. I'm just going to see if we have any questions so far. I'm not seeing any questions so far. Cool. So just to set a bit more context for those of you that are new, so today is all about sort of new contributors, people that maybe thought about contributing but maybe don't know where to start, or tried to do something and then got stuck. Friday, the 1st of October, it's a lot more involved discussion. You're all welcome to join there, but we'll probably go a bit more technical. So sometimes we'll be talking about new bits of code that will be coming into Ansible, new bits of functionality that the core team or the networking team or the cloud team here at Red Hat are proposing. But also we're going to sort of look at a lot more of what it is to be a maintainer, what are the pain points of contributing to Ansible, what are the things that make your life difficult, and how can we solve those? In particular, we're going to be talking about asynchronous communication, how we can get better at making people aware of what's going on. So please do join us on Friday if that sounds interesting to you. Again, this is all in the same HackMD, which you will have seen and I see has been posted in the chat. Thank you. Just to close, this is a link to the Instruct scenarios that we've got, and we'll be leaving these available all the time, so do have a dig through those. I will pass over to Carol to see if she has anything else she'd like to say.
Hi, thanks, Gundlo. I don't have much to add, just if you have any questions about the use of matrix, or whether you're on IRC or matrix, you can always ask the questions. It's bridged, so we should be able to see that and help you with any issues you might be having in joining the conference. And you should be able to watch the live stream with the YouTube link, which is on the topic, in the topics, in the channels. For those, not just for those on IRC, but also for people who are using matrix clients that don't support the widgets that are to embed the YouTube streams. So yeah, thanks for all of you for joining, and again, the channels are open and available for any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Now hand over to Tyler Burrow. So Ansible has a steering committee, which helps us drive governance about how Ansible should be used in the future direction we should be taking, and help to answer some of the more difficult questions and also ask some of the more difficult questions. Tyler Burrow was recently elected the chair of that committee, which is brilliant, especially because he's someone external to Red Hat. He's a community member. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tyler Burrow and welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
So hello from my side. As John already introduced me, my name is Tadej, also known as Tadej Boro on IRC. So yeah, it's not often you see the community chair giving you an introduction into setting up the development environment, but this is how Ansible community works, and this is what we'll actually do today. So I'll just start sharing my screen, or at least I'll try to share my screen and see what happens. So if nothing broke majorly, you should at least soonish start to see my white terminal. Yeah, this is also one of my, I would say, specialties, having a scheme that no other programmer is using. Okay, so as promised, today we'll have a look at how we can set up, say, a minimal development environment so that we can actually start contributing to Ansible Collections. I will focus primarily on, as I said, Ansible Collections, but there are just minimal adjustments you need to make in order to also contribute to the Ansible core if you want to. But as we are community mostly focused on helping developers maintain and develop content for Ansible in the form of Ansible Collections, this is what I'll focus today on. So, as I already mentioned in the HackMD document, there are not too many prerequisites that we need to have installed if we want to start developing for Ansible. So one of the things is a semi-newishly Linux system that have at least Python 3.8. So latest stable Debian, latest stable Fedora, Ubuntu LTS, all of those things work just fine. You can also install Python 3.8 or older distributions, but from my experience, it's just easier to go with some semi-recent distribution and have one worry less. I will share a link later today with the repository that that will contain Vagrant definitions for Debian, Fedora, and Ubuntu virtual machines that I will be showcasing during this demo. So you can actually use this when you bootstrap your environment, or if your distribution is too old, you can maybe use this to prepare a virtualized and development environment. So, as I said before, there is not much things we need to install. One of the things is Python, or as I already said, and the other important thing is basically Docker. So, what you need is a basic Docker installation. Because most of the testing tools in the Ansible ecosystem, especially unit testing and sanity checking, do use Docker to run tests in an isolated environment so that we don't have to pollute our own work machines with different Python versions that are obsolete or even hardly available today. So what I did prepare is a few playbooks that basically just encapsulate things that are listed in the official Docker documentation. So if we take a look at, say, Ubuntu playbook, and yes, I'll show you the installation procedure using Ansible because we are talking Ansible today, nonetheless. So this is basically all we need to do. So we need some, I would say, the packages that we can add to Docker repository. We need to retrieve the key for the repo. We need to add the Docker list file. So this is so Ubuntu Docker list, just a simple Debian repository that informs apt where to retrieve Docker from. And then we install the Docker, create Docker group, add our regular user to this newly created Docker group so that we don't have to run Docker as a super user. And probably the most important thing is this last 3 lines here. So we need to make sure that virtual environment support is available in our environment. So on some distributions such as Fedora, when you install Python, you do get the complete standard library, which means also virtual environment support. But on Debian derived distributions, this virtual environment is distributed separately. So do make sure to install this. Otherwise, you'll have problems creating virtual environments that we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so we can actually provision this. As I said before, I'm using Vagrant here just for the, we'll say, I do not to mess up my primary development machine. So I set up a few virtual machines that I can use to throw away when this is over. And you will be able to reuse the things I prepared for setting up your own local environments. So this will take about a minute or two. And while this is working, we can probably take a look at another thing. So what we do need to prepare for, I would say, from the Python side, or how will we actually prepare the virtual environments. So yeah, this will take a while. Jitsi is giving my machine something to work with, so it's taking a toll on it. So we'll try to parallelize things a bit. So, right, I wanted to show you another playbook that I prepared. So the first part of this playbook contains the same information we already see before. So we install Docker and Python. And this last thing is the important thing. So I would say this is what is of primary concern today. So this is what is basically what we need when we are developing Ansible modules. So just let me see if things are okay. We are proceeding. So basically, when we are developing Ansible collection, or when we are trying to contribute something to the upstream, it is not enough to work with a single Ansible version, because most of the collections, especially collections that are part of the Ansible community package, do support different Ansible versions. And most of them, as you can see here, support 3 Ansible versions as of today. So Ansible 2.9, Ansible 2.10, which is basically Ansible base, and Ansible Core 2.11, which is the latest stable release. And as of today, or as of yesterday, depending on when you're at home, you can also install Ansible base, Ansible Core 2.12.0 Beta Ana. So this is another package that were just released. This is a preview version of the next stable release. I'll just add this in. As you can see, I prepared this a few days before, and things are already outdated by today. So what I did here is basically list different virtual environments. So on the left side is a virtual environment name, and on the right side is an Ansible version that we will actually install using pip into this virtual environment. So let me just see. Oh, we are almost there. So we are actually just installing as I said before, the most important bit, so to speak, the virtual environment support. So what we can do now is SSH into this new Ubuntu virtual machine. And the important thing is when we run Python 3 venv, this should not fail. So this is I would say, the most important command we need, because we want to create, I would say, isolated environment for testing different Ansible versions. As you can see, because we installed the right system packages, we can now actually create new virtual environments, activate them, do things like install things, and this important thing. So this will actually install Ansible into a separate environment that has no effect on the system. So this is actually safe to do even on your work machine, as long as you're in the virtual environment. Okay, so I'll terminate this because this is not what we're interested in, this is not primary focus. So I just showed you how you can actually set up, I would say, the basic Python development environment on Ubuntu. And now we can actually turn our attention back to the virtual environments. So we took a look at what Ansible versions we want to actually use when testing. And what our playbook does is it creates a new virtual environment there that will host all our virtual environments. And then it creates one virtual environment per Ansible version that we listed there. So as you can see, we basically loop over the keys, so over the names, and create virtual environment for each of the keys. This is another important thing that can trip newcomers up when they first try to, I would say, set up the development environment. Quite a few Linux distributions distribute pip that is a bit older than upstream. So versions of pip that are older than 20 point something usually need to be updated. The main reason is when we install Ansible or Ansible core, one of the dependencies is a cryptography library that is really hard to get working when using older pip versions if you don't have Rust environment installed and so on and so forth. So basically the safest thing to do is when you create new virtual environment, just make sure to update your pip installation so that you don't have problems when installing the Python packages that might have some, I would say, a bit more advanced binary requirements, such as cryptography that relies on some Rust code that needs to be compiled. And the last thing our playbook actually does is install different Ansible versions into separate virtual environments. So as you can see, we again loop over the Ansible versions, select the pip from the right virtual environment, and then install the package that we listed in the right side of the Ansible versions. Because I anticipated that things may get slow today, I already run this playbook on my Debian virtual machine. So if we SSH into this Debian machine, as you can see, we already have virtual environments here. And there are 4 of them, the one that I just added, so 12 point, Ansible Core 2.12 is not here. As I said before, I prepared this a bit in advance, so that version was not released yet. And we can actually activate any of those virtual environments now. So for example, Ansible 2.10 being activated. And if we say Ansible version, we can actually see what version we actually installed or what version our playbook installed. So if we try one more, so for example, Ansible 2.11. And if we go with Ansible version, we can see that different virtual environments contain different Ansible versions. Okay, so this is basically all you need to do to prepare your development machine. So this is what you need as far as the tools go. So Python, virtual environment, and Ansible. And how to proceed from here on basically depends on what you want to do. And because I was doing quite a lot of collection reviews lately, I'll just show you how I usually set up my environment for reviewing a particular collection that is that wants to be included in the Ansible community package. So for this, we first need to create some folders that will actually put the stuff on. So I'll just say review. This is basically anything you need, but the next 2 pieces are important. So the next thing is maybe I should actually decide what collection will we review today. So let's say inclusions. So I just clicked one of them that are not processed yet. So what I selected is Trend Micro deepsec collection. So let me just take this. So this is where I'll basically place all of the files I need when reviewing the trend micro deepsec. Next two pieces are important or need to be here just to make sure that Ansible Test will actually know what to do with our collection. So the first important thing is Ansible Collections. This is one, I would say, namespace prefix or Python module prefix that Ansible expects to see when running tests from Git checkout. So if you want to run Ansible Test from the Git checkout, you just make sure that your collection is, I would say, rooted under Ansible Collections. And another thing we need to say is another folder we need to create is trend micro. This is the namespace because we need to check out the collection into Ansible Collections /namespace /collection name. So this is basically the directory structure we need before we can actually check out the collection. And now we can do git clone trend micro, and we'll check it out into the collection name, which is deepsec. Okay. And this is it. So this is our collection. Let me just show you again how the directory trees. Okay. I would show you if I would install tree command beforehand. I'll do it now. So, okay. What we did is just created Ansible Collections trend micro deepsec because we want to actually work on the trend micro deepsec Ansible collection. So when you are checking out the collection and are preparing to do some work on the collection, just make sure those three folders are there, or Ansible Test will complain that it cannot find certain things. Okay, and this is basically all you need to do. So first thing I usually do when I review collection is just run Ansible Sanity Tests. Just to make, so Ansible Test Sanity. And we will run them in Docker container. And this is why we actually installed Docker. So I'll just run this command and I'll explain what this actually does. So Ansible Test is actually part of the Ansible package. So when we installed Ansible Core 2.11, we got the specific version of Ansible Test. And as I said before, we do want to test our collection, or we want to check our collection against all of the Ansible versions our collection support. But another important thing is that we also make sure that our collection works with different Python versions that collections usually support. So again, when we are talking about the Ansible community packages, collection usually support at least Python 2.7. Most of them also support Python 2.6, but some of them opted to only support Python 3 point something. But in order to check this, we would need to locally have all of those Python versions available, which is quite hard to do, especially when it comes to Python 2.6. It's quite hard to install it. So by using the Docker switch to the Ansible Test, or by supplying the Docker switch to the Ansible Test, we don't actually have to have those Python versions installed locally. Ansible will download the Docker image that already contains a lot of Python versions. As you can see here, we have from Python 2.6 to Python 3.8, 9, maybe even Python 3.10. I don't remember exactly. But the general idea is you do need to have separate environments for your different Ansible versions, but you do not have to have all of the different Python versions installed on your local machine in order to test your collection against those Python versions. The Ansible testing containers do provide those Python packages. Okay, so this is a bit unexpected. So as you can see, we do have some import errors when running Sanity Test. And when we run Sanity Test, this usually means that we forgot to install some Ansible, some collection dependency. So Ansible Sanity is not smart enough to actually check the collection dependencies and install them. We have to do this manually. So actually, I'm quite glad that we hit this error. So I can show you how can we actually resolve it. So as you can see, what we hit is no module named Ansible Collections, Ansible Net Common. Once you're working with the collections a bit more, you start to recognize what collection you need to install. And in this case, we actually need Ansible Net Common Collection. And we can install it using Ansible Galaxy command line tool. So Ansible Galaxy collection install. And this is another important thing to note. We need to install this collection locally. So we need to install this collection in a directory structure that we just created. If we leave this P switch that I just added, Ansible will by default install this somewhere in the home folder under .ansible something, but the Ansible test will not be able to find the requirement there. So we need to actually install this locally in the directory tree we just created. This is also another reason why I actually created review trend micro deepsec directory, although you may say you can create one Ansible collection hierarchy for all collections we want to review. But because collections can have different dependencies or have dependencies that may coincide, it is actually safer and I would say more natural to separate each collection into its own directory tree and also install their requirements there. So this way we don't mix and match collections, or when we are testing certain collection with dependencies we installed as a part of another process. So what we also need to say is Ansible Net Common. So we need to install this dependency and we'll install it into the same Ansible Galaxy collection install. Okay, there was one S too much in that command. And if I rerun the tree command again, as you can see, we actually installed not only one collection now, but two. So trend micro deepsec needed net common, but it looks like from the installation output, the Ansible net common collection also requires Ansible util spec collection. So this all got installed into our local directory that we created, especially for trend micro deepsec review. And if you rerun the sanity test again, that import error should be gone and things should go rather smoothly from here on. What we can actually do is, while this is running, I can also show you how requirements are actually declared in the file, in the collection itself. So if you go to reviews, trend micro Ansible collections, trend micro deepsec. So this is the collection we are running sanity test in the other terminal. And if you take a look at the Galaxy YAML file and search for dependencies. Okay, so this is a bit unexpected. So we actually managed to find a bug in the trend micro collection. So because Ansible trend micro deepsec collection depends on the Ansible net common, this dependency should actually be declared under the dependencies so that Ansible Galaxy command would actually pull those dependencies in. It does not make a difference for sanity testing, as I showed you before, because Ansible test actually ignores this or does not consult the dependencies at all. So we need to always manually install the dependencies. But when it comes to the end users, those dependencies should actually be declared in the Galaxy file so that users don't end up with a collection that is actually missing some important parts. So yeah, I wanted to show you how to declare dependencies, but we just hit the the situation where there are none because they are missing. So anyone listening, feel free to file a bug or wait a few minutes and I'll file it once we are done. So as you can see, now the import on Python 2.6 and Python 2.7 actually passed. So which means by installing that dependency, we actually resolved the issue that we hit before. The last thing I wanted to show you, I'll not wait for this sanity test to finish, is the same way we run the sanity tests inside the Docker container. We can also run unit tests. We can also run unit tests, but it looks like this collection actually does not have any unit tests. Yes, unit. There are some, but I'm not sure. Looks like there is no actual files to be tested. Let me just see. So there is no test. There is a unit test file, but there are no unit files, no unit tests in there. So I can actually show you how unit tests looks like when executed, but it's basically the same idea as before. When Ansible test runs the unit test inside the Docker container, it runs them against all Python versions that are available in the container. There are a few ways collections that do not support all Python versions can actually limit what Python versions to actually test against. So for example, we can say that we only want to test against Python 3.8. I'm showing here again the sanity command because we just learned that DeepSec has no unit test. But as you can see, instead of running the sanity test against all Python versions that are available in the container itself, Ansible now just uses the Python 3.8. And this is, I would say, a nice shortcut when you are actually developing things. You run against one Python version regularly. It takes quite a lot less time when you limit the number of Python versions you test against. And then when you're roughly done developing, or when you are almost done developing, you can then actually rerun the test using all Python versions. And the same thing goes for the Ansible versions themselves. So when you are developing, I usually pick up the latest stable Ansible version, develop collection against that version, and then I usually go to the oldest supported Ansible version, run tests on that version, fix things that need to be fixed in that, and then slowly at the end of the development cycle, when I go through all Ansible versions, this is when I actually open a pull request and commit things to the upstream. So this is basically all I had to say. Not sure if there are any questions. I'll see if I can open the HackMD document and see if there is anything happening here. So as far as I can tell, there are no questions. If you have any questions, or if you are interested in getting some information from me, feel free to ask them in Matrix or IRC, and I'll do my best to answer them. As I promised, I will post a link to the repository that contains the Vagrant files and playbooks I showed, and I'll also do my best to write a README file that will demonstrate, or that will have some instructions and a brief overview of what I just showed you today. So with this,
today I think there are some questions.
They are where? I don't see them. Maybe I'm.
If you look at line 100 in the HackMD,
It's in the HackMD.
it says the Q&A section heading under group instructor led class and set.
Maybe we can read out the question for today. Let's see.
I don't see a Q&A.
You might have to refresh it.
Maybe that's the
yeah.
problem. Let me try refresh the HackMD document.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. Now I see. Okay. I see. Okay, so Honix sorry if I butchered your nickname. So Honix didn't Molecule replace the Vagrant? Well, Molecule and Vagrant in this scenario serve two different purposes. So I used Vagrant to actually set up my local development environment. Molecule is more tailored towards running integration tests against the target things. So I used Vagrant to set up my development environment. And when it comes to Molecule, I would actually run Molecule inside my Debian virtual machine I just created, for example, when running integration tests for collections that do have such tests. So, for example, our Sensu collection actually have integration test suite written in Molecule, and things that are listed in Molecule actually relate to the things that we want to test against our collection. The things I showed you today is more or less static analysis and some unit testing that happens in the Docker container. So I would say when we run Ansible Test, we run things in Ansible in Docker container. When we run tests using Molecule, we use Molecule to create or Docker containers, virtual machines, or whatever that we can then actually run tests in. So things that I showed today and Molecule are not strictly related. I would say the most correct characterization would be when you set up the development environment using Ansible, the next step is to set up the Molecule if you're interested in developing Ansible collections or Ansible roles. Okay, so the next thing is we have multiple ways of setting up developer Python interpreter, some for the controller. What are the options for targets of the playbook? Can you use virtual environment as Ansible Python interpreter? Again, this is not strictly related to development setup environment, but I can answer this one. So yeah, basically you can actually use Ansible to set up virtual environment on the target machine, and then in another play, just switch the Python interpreter that should be used to that virtual environment, and the Ansible will work as expected for most of the time, as long as you have all the required Python packages installed. And this is actually what we did quite a lot on older systems that did not have required Python packages in the upstream repositories. And in order to avoid making a mess, we just created new virtual environment and installed dependencies using pip into that virtual environment. And the last question I see, what are the setup playbooks used in the example? So in the example I used, okay, so I stopped sharing my screen too soon. So let me. So for example, this is my Debian setup. In the Vagrant file, I actually said provision Ansible and use this playbook. So when these playbooks that I showed you before are actually used when I run either Vagrant up. So Vagrant up when the virtual machine is not up yet or is missing, will actually create the virtual machine and run the provisioning step by itself. Or you can actually manually run this by running Vagrant provision, and this will also execute the playbook itself. So this is the playbook. I think I did even edit this. So maybe we'll see Ansible creating yet another virtual environment for the beta version of the Ansible that we actually created. Yeah, but to answer the question, where are the setup playbooks used? They're used by Vagrant, so in the provisioning step of the Vagrant. And yeah, judging by the delay here, Vagrant actually picked up the change that I entered into the playbook itself and installed the Ansible 2.12 in a virtual environment onto the Debian virtual machine. And as far as I can tell, all of the other questions were already answered. So, but I might be wrong. But if I don't see any more, so if this is
Yeah,
all?
I think looks like that's all for now.
Yeah, great. So I'll shut up and get to work. So as before, if you have any more questions, feel free to ping me on the IRC, on the matrix, and I'll do my best to answer questions. And I promise by the end of the day, I will publish things I showed you to the GitHub, and I'll make sure you'll get the link. So thank you again for listening to me, and I hope we can chat in the IRC a bit more.
Thank you so much today for the excellent demo and presentation. Next on the agenda, we have Omprakash with the instruct, self-paced instruct. Please.
Thanks, Carol. So yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Om Prakash, and I'm part of Ansible community team at Red Hat. So yeah, this talk is about self-paced instruct, and as the name goes, self-paced, it means that you can learn on your own time and on your own schedule and on your own speed. And yeah, I'll talk about why instruct, because as John mentioned during the start, we were using Katacoda until last year, and now instruct is a new platform, and I'll tell why we moved from Katacoda to instruct. Basically, I'll just talk about the features that was offered by instruct, and then the list of available courses from Ansible community team. So why instruct? It offers hands-on instructions, unlike it's same like other learning platforms, and with instruct it's more simple and it's fast, and even if you're stuck, we have a great support team, and they'll help us to resolve any issue. I'm not promoting instruct, but yeah, I'm just talking about why instruct instead of Katacoda. And yeah, it has a runtime, and you can directly execute all the steps that is mentioned on the right side, which I'll show in the demo in a couple of minutes. And then we can integrate almost all the major cloud providers, and then we can try things out there. So these are the list of available tracks on Instruct right now. Why these courses? To help community contributors or newbies to speed up with their contributions to Ansible project. So we have creating your own collection course, testing a pull request locally, how to develop an Ansible module, and then adding integration tests to Ansible collections and testing collections. So the last course was available on Katacoda, and then we moved from Katacoda to Instruct. So it's the same course, and you might have tried it earlier as well. So yeah, I'll give a short demo. Basically, I'll walk through Instruct UI, how to start a course, and then how you can do things in there. So you can access this link. Maybe I can post it in Ansible workshop channel. So yeah, we have 5 courses right now available. Maybe I'll show an example of the first one, that is creating your own collection. So yeah, when you click on start course, it'll directly take you to the Instruct UI. On the right side, you'll find the instructions and what we are going to do. And then on the left pane, we can actually run commands on the VMs. So right now we are using GCE. I mean, all the VMs are running on Google Cloud Platform. So I don't think I can walk you through all the details in there, but yeah, maybe you can just run the commands right now to understand how we can work with instruct. I think I already started and ran the command, so that's why it says it is installed. And maybe I can close it. I'll start it again. So it takes about a minute to start. And once when the environment is ready, you just have to click the start button and read through all the information that is given on the right side and then execute the commands one by one. So this course is about creating your own collection. And the first thing we need to have is Ansible install. So we're doing it right now. And let's check the Ansible version. So it's 2.11.5. So let's check. And if you, forgot to install Ansible and directly click on this check button, it will show failed. So we have to complete all the steps for each challenge. So creating collection skeleton using Ansible Galaxy command. Again, you can go through all the details. And this is the directory structure needed for a collection. So here it's going to create a directory for collection, and then let's change to the directory. So what I did here is I didn't execute the commands, but I directly clicked on check. That's why it shows incorrect solution. So let's execute the command. Okay, so it created the directory, and then we switch to Ansible collections. And once after creating the directory, we should inform Ansible that this is the new directory path. A customized directory path that we are going to use for collections. So let's export that. Now let's create a collection using Ansible Galaxy command.
Prakash,
Yeah.
is it possible to enlarge the fonts, the screen a little bit? Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Is it clear
Thank
now?
you. Yep.
Sure. So what I did here is I created a collection named community.clock. So community is the namespace name and clock is the collection name. So let's run this tree command. So we can see the same output. Click on check. Now it goes to the next challenge. So creating an example collection. Here let's change to plugins directory under the new collection that we created in the last challenge. And if you if you're planning to develop a module or planning to copy an existing module, it should be under plugins modules directory. So let's create the directory. For this course, just as an example, I'm copying a time zone module from general community general collection. It's created. Let's run ls. It's there. Let's check the path. So if you can see, it's under community clock plugins modules directory. Check. So every collection has a galaxy.yaml file, basically that contains the metadata. Let's go ahead and edit that file. So now click on check. So at the end of each challenge, you can find a link, and then yeah, it takes you to Ansible Docs website, so that you can know more about what you're doing and the features. So now we created a collection and we copied a module inside the collection. So let's use it in a playbook. And for that, let's create a playbook file. So with instruct, if you're planning to copy, um, any playbook content or Python files, make sure that you uh, paste it using paste method in Vim. And if you're planning to copy it directly, you will face indentation error. I'll show you that. So right now it's not in paste mode, and if I try to copy it, so this is how it copies. Let me exit. Open it again. What I have to do is set paste and then press I. Now if you copy it, it copies the correct indentation format. So now let's execute this playbook. So it works. And to check, so what this, let me explain you. This playbook has two tasks, and each task is two plays, and each task is one task each. So in the first one, we are using FQCM to call the module. That is community.clock.timezone, and we are setting the time zone to Europe, Paris. And in the second one, we are using the keyword collections, and then calling the collection name directly in the start, and then we can just use time zone like we do it in legacy Ansible. That is in Ansible 2.9. So yeah, let's check the status. Yeah, it's changed to Europe, Paris. And by default, whenever you create any mission, it comes with UTC in this course. And now we change to Europe, Paris. And yeah, this demo is not to give you a technical session on how to create a collection, but just to show how you can work with instruct tracks to start and to learn the details in there. So once if you check the last challenge, it'll ask you for feedback. But for now, I'm happy with this course, so I'll give the last smiley. And yeah, make sure you give feedback directly on the GitHub discussion that we have for instruct. I'll show you that in a while. And for this course, so yeah, that's it with the demo. And for the feedback, I added this link in the course, but yeah, I didn't update it on the UI. So now it should be available. And it will take you to this link. So here, we have created a discussion under Ansible Instruct repo. You can share your learning experience and how you really felt learning new thing about an Ansible. And you can post your comments. Or if you want to, if you want more courses that can help you for the contribution part, maybe you can also suggest that here, and we'll work on it and we'll make it ready for you on the Instruct platform. So yeah, that's all I had about Instruct. And I'll be there. Our whole community team is here. You can access the link that I pasted on Ansible social channel. As it's self-paced, you can start the course and then learn. And if you are stuck somewhere or if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in Ansible chat channel. And right now, if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Thanks, Prakash. I think there's one question. Why was curl used to get timezone.py instead of Ansible Galaxy command?
Okay. Is it there on?
It's Matrix or IRC in the main conference channel.
So yeah, like I said, just for example, I'm copying timezone.py. So timezone module is available in community.general collection. It's not part of other collections, and this is a new collection that I'm creating. And whenever you create a new collection, it does not come with any modules in it. We have to either develop it or copy the existing ones. And like I said, for example purpose, I'm downloading the file from GitHub, that is from the repo community.general, and then putting it in the collection that I created right now, just for the course purpose, for you to understand.
All right. I don't think I see any more questions for now. Please feel free to try out the Instruct scenarios, and if you have any questions, there's the workshop room on Matrix and Ansible workshops on IRC where you can ask questions.
Yeah, one more thing. So after trying out the courses, feel free to post your feedback, and we'll select any 5 random people, and we'll send some special specs, as John mentioned during the talk. So yeah.
Yes, thanks for reminding for that. So please provide your feedback in GitHub. Let's see. I believe that's all the questions we have. Gondolo, we can start the break a little bit earlier. Be good, or?
Hi, thank you very much for that, Prakash. And I can see from the statistics, I think 7 people have already completed one of the Instruct labs. So please let us know what you think, right? I know we'll get some cool swag sent out to you. As you mentioned earlier, this is a new platform that we've looked at. Before we just had a single training course in Katakoda, but we got some feedback from you about a year ago now, I guess, 18 months. That you quite liked it. We'd like to see a lot more. So yeah, let us know what you think. Do the steps make sense? Is there some assumed knowledge that isn't now? Would you like more links to documentation? And also sort of what else can we put some training courses together? We realize different people learn in different ways. Some people like docs, some people like these webinars like we're doing today, and some people like interactive labs. So we're hoping that we can do a mix of different things for people. So please do give us feedback, and we will send you some cool swag. I think we're about ready for the first break now. No doubt, once you've refilled your teas and coffees, you will think of lots of difficult questions. Please stick those in the chat. Anything developer related, contributor related, setting up meetups, what's happening with virtual events, what's happening with in-person events, doesn't have to necessarily be related to the stuff we're talking about today, but just keep the questions coming and we'll answer them. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We'll be back in 24 minutes so we can stick to the agenda. And I'll put up a timer. So thanks, everyone. And please feel free to continue chatting and asking questions. And we'll see you in a little bit. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ansible Contributor Summit, the first day, and I hope all of you had a nice break. So to continue with the agenda, right now we are going to introduce the hackathon that will be that will be running throughout this week. Let me share my screen so I can talk more about it. Oh, which one? Okay. All right, hackathon overview. Yes, so as you can see on the HackMD, all the details for the hackathon are there, but I'm just going to go through it a little bit. Actually, Derek, our team member, is the one who put everything together, so all credits go to him. I'm just helping out to introduce it because it's like 4:30 a.m. at his in Hawaii right now, so it's a bit early for him. But anyway, so the format is going to be self-paced. It's going to last throughout the week, starting from right now to Friday, the whole week. And it's interactive on Matrix and RRC. So the main room which we'll be using is the training room, which is also the, it's called workshops at the workshops.ansible.com on Matrix. And it's also bridged to Ansible-workshops on Libera chat on RRC. So either channel you're in, you should be able to see all the messages. So who is it for? It's really for anyone who wants to contribute in various capacities. So even if you have never contributed and you want to learn how to get started, it will be a great chance to do so. Existing contributors want to work on something specific during this week, you're more than welcome, maintainers, and so on. So it's wide open for all kinds of topics and interests. So collections is a thing, and also as I go through later some of the pitches, you'll see there's other topics that you can work on. So where, as I've mentioned, it's going to be over IRC and Matrix. And if you use Matrix, you can you can start ad hoc Jitsi sessions to discuss with each other. And you can also easily share the Jitsi link for somebody who's not on Matrix. For example, somebody who's on IRC, and then just share the link and you can join in to have more face-to-face discussions. And when, again, as mentioned, is throughout this week, starting from today to Friday, for improving Ansible and your favorite collections. So, okay, let's see how to get started. Most probably, many of you already have GitHub accounts, but if not, please go ahead and create one because it will help in, it'll be used in most cases for the participation in the hackathon. And there are some background readings here. Basically, the Instruct Labs will help. And also we have a community guide that if you have not seen this before, it gives you a lot of information of where to look for help, how to file a bug, working with the repos, and so on. It's a good resource for a lot of contributors to the Ansible community. All right, so let's take a look at some of the elevator pitches. Oops. So these are some of what has already been proposed. So you can see there's the community.network collection, which will be kind of led by Derek, as he's one of the maintainers. He'll be available maybe a couple of hours later when he gets up. Ansible, which is the led by Tosho, and you can also see some of the description, what you can work on, changing, for example, Ansible-base references to Ansible core, and so on. Other collection code improvements, and Andrew will have several examples, what to work on, several issues already available here. Ara by David, and I believe he just joined. David, would you like to give a brief intro or just mention a few words?
Yes. Hello, I'm David. I'm the author of Ara. I'll be here during the day. So if you would like to try Ara to have simple reporting for Ansible Playbooks, please go ahead and let me know if you run into any issues, and we can work that out.
Thank you. And statistics, which Greg Sutcliffe is taking care of, and so he's tracking a lot of information about the community. And if you have ideas of what you want to track, or things you want to discuss with him, look for him. He's been very active in the matrix room and helping everybody to answer questions. So thanks for that. Documentation, again, very important. Sam McCain and Arior Dunn. There's already an issue which is you can work on. I'm sure there are others as well. And actually, yeah, there's others labeled with hackathon. Yeah, Greg, if you want to join, feel free to do so. Matrix, which is also taken care of by Greg. So as we're using this shiny new platform for this event and going forward for communication in our community, please feel free to give feedback. It's we're all learning to use this new platform. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask Greg and any of us in the team. Outreach, which is what I'm mostly taking care of. So if you want to help out in, like, for example, meetups, events, and also the Bullhorn newsletter, feel free to ping me, Cybet on Matrix IRC, and so on. This one you probably don't need a GitHub account, but in any case, well, actually you do. For Bullhorn, we are using GitHub to gather the content for each issue of the newsletter. So, and finally, the Ansible network team has they even have their schedule shared, which I can show. So for each of these, some of us have shared our. Oops, I need to update this. Some of us have shared our availability for this week, so you can see who's available when. Or if you can just directly message us, and if you're interested in something, to message us and find out when we are available. And also, this is the Ansible network team. They have their availability indicated in the calendar here, which is all linked to from the pitch HackMD, pitches HackMD. And I see that Greg has joined us. Greg, would you like to share a bit of information?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, the stats thing, I put this in optimistically because realistically, I'm probably the only one that cares that much. But I'm genuinely always interested in what people want to know. When you come to Ansible, when you want to decide what to contribute to or where you can help, or as a maintainer, if you want to know something particular about your collection, I need to hear that, right? Because I can build that stuff for us. But it's difficult to get feedback sometimes. So very happy to talk about stats, not realistically expecting people to spend their contributor summit on it, but If you are got a burning passion or a particular burning question you want answered, then we can work together on it. Matrix is probably more topical. So the point here is that if anyone needs any help with anything or has any ideas on how we can improve our usage, our integrations, then I'm very happy to grab a room and discuss that with people, because there's a lot we can do. This is going very well so far. I'm quite happy with the day so far, but there's still much to talk about there. And I've got a session on Friday about that, which is a bit more sort of presenter style, but I'm happy to have some discussions and hear some feedback first.
All right, thanks, Greg. And again, for some of you may have registered just for today, and if you want to join on Friday, you can use the same Eventbrite link that you used previously to register for today, to register for Friday, and we will share information about the YouTube link, and also it should be in the same Matrix rooms and IRC channels, but you'll get all the information as well for Friday. All right, let's see what else. So now some of the pictures you have seen, and if you're interested, again, please directly reach out to the people in charge or working on them on Matrix and IRC. And if you do not find what you're looking for, you can create your own topic. Just share it, announce it in the room, and ask if anybody else is interested. And I think already there was some suggestions earlier on that could be good topics for the hackathon. So again, it's open. You're not limited to what's available on the pitches HackMD, but it's your hackathon. Work on something that you're interested in. Yeah, and continuously bookmark this main HackMD for the summit, in case there are updates to the pitches or to information, and we can always and if you have questions, we can always try to answer them. What else? Is there any other questions, Greg? Let me see. I don't see any questions added to HackMD. Several windows. I don't see any questions in the Matrix room. Maybe I need to check the workshops room.
Hey, folks. So, we know contributing to Ansible, there's a lot of stuff there. We're happy to help out on any part of this that you might get stuck at. It might be getting set up with Git or how to create a PR or anything like this. I mean, personally, it's about 6-7 years ago, I was using Ansible in the company I worked at. I introduced it there. I found a few bugs and then tried to work out how to go and fix them. I'd never used Git before, never contributed to an open source project before, done anything like that. So I went through the learning curve of how to do that and trying to understand how to make the CI green, how to get Ansible Test green, and trying to understand all those sorts of things. So all of us have been through these sort of onboarding pains before. So we're really happy to try and help and support you in any way we can. We understand that actually you may know how to fix the bug or to implement a feature. It's just a bit of Python you need to update, but all the other stuff of how to check out your collection, how to fork that, how to then create a pull request, what is Ansible Test and why is it commenting on or Ansible bot commenting on your PR to say this thing's broken, what does that mean? We're happy to guide you through any of that. So yeah, join us in the workshop channel. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Gundlo. And I guess we're a bit early for the next session. David, what do you think? Would you like to start the session earlier and maybe have a bit more time? Oh, but you have 2 other presenters that you're waiting for.
Yep. Hang on just a second here. I need to turn off this blurry thing. It's making my video lag a little bit. Won't be long. How do you do that again?
You mean the background?
Yeah, I was having fun and I had it like blur in Jitsi, and I mean it works, but it has an impact on the
A bit of
CPU
dip, yeah.
usage. So let me clear that. Okay, should be good now. Let me turn that back on. Yes, so we will have, oh, it's still laggy. That's unfortunate. We will have a session very soon, Ask a Maintainer. I'm waiting for my co-presenters to join. We're still a little bit early. But in the meantime, if you've ever wondered what's involved in the maintenance of an Ansible project, not just an Ansible collection, maybe it's a tool, maybe it's documentation, maybe it's something else, feel free to send your questions our way, and we will be able to answer them very soon. In the meantime, I will rejoin to try and clear this video lag and be right back.
All right.
Okay, how does that look? Much better, no more lag. Great.
Yeah, that looks a lot better.
Yep. So let me, we still have some time to go still. Let me go ahead and share the slides here and at least let the people start asking questions so we can get them in time. Share this one. Okay, hopefully that works. So just quickly, how to ask questions. You've been here since the beginning. You are on metrics on IRC. We will also, if there's any questions after the session, it's not like we'll be running away or anything. We'll be there to answer the questions. And I'll leave the slide on to give you some ideas. What kind of questions would you like to ask, right? Gonna mute myself though, which is in another screen.
Yeah, feel free to take a look at these potential topics and think about some questions, and the session should start in around 10 minutes.
just while we're waiting for the next session, just wanted to say thank you very much to the. Sorry, I can see that I think 11 people. Oh no, sorry, 18 people have completed some of the Instruct labs. That's brilliant, and I see there's another 10 or so. Sorry, 10 or so in progress. So that's really good. Thank you very much for the people that have been giving us feedback on discussion 54. There's some really good bits there. We'll definitely look at putting a better text editor in so people aren't fighting with Vim. So please keep the feedback coming. While we wait for the next session, please think about what top questions you got. There's some ideas of potential topics there. Feel free to put some bits in Matrix or Slack. And we'll go through all those. Just as a reminder, there is about a 20 to 30 second lag from us presenting to the stream appearing on YouTube. So just keep the questions coming as soon as you can. That really helps us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We are about on time. I have quickly introducing myself. I'm David Samard. You can find me as DM Samard on IRC and Matrix. I am joined by Jill and Amy. Jill and Amy, are you there?
Yep. Hey, David. How's it going? And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jill. I'm part of the Ansible Cloud team. I am Jill R on IRC, Matrix, and GitHub. If you need to track me down somewhere.
Hi, everyone. I had to find my mute button. I'm Amy Marish. I'm known as Spots everywhere. If you need to track me down, I am on Libera and on OFTC. We are OpenStack Live, so I'm in 2 of them. And I'm here to help out.
Cool. Thanks. So to say again, I have my entire screen on the slides. So hopefully people can send us questions and we can answer them on stream. On IRC, on Matrix, if we don't get time to answer all the questions, we will get to them eventually after the session. No worries about that. And we're here all week for Contributor Summit and Ansible Fest, so you know where to find us. I mentioned earlier some potential topics around questions that people might want to ask. Maybe you are not a maintainer and you would like to become one, or you don't know what's involved. If we were in person, I would like to do a show of hands. How many people here are currently maintaining an open source project? And feel free to go, raise your hand in chat or something along those lines, just out of curiosity. And well, if you're not maintaining a project right now, if you would like to maintain one, that's cool too. We have, oh yes, I remember we have a question from earlier today. We could probably start with that one. Let me figure out if I can find it. Okay, hopefully that doesn't screw the stream up. So we had a question from a NetOps engineer. He asks, as someone who is comfortable with creating modules and collections at a small scale, what type of resources are available for noobs or for the more advanced developer experience type tools like Ansible or Collection Prep, and helping learn the developer workflow around those tools? Day 0, turn up. You guys have made modules and collections straightforward with the init commands, but the day 1 and beyond maintenance seems like a steep step for someone with the current documentation around those topics. So I feel like this question is, okay, so it's easy to start. You have these init commands. What does day 2 look like? And is there anything that we can do to make that easier?
Yeah, I guess I'll add. I know some of those tools have been developed, I guess we'd say slightly recently, and they're not things that we prescribe. They are certainly there if folks benefit from them and would like to use them, but we also know that not all collections are using those to generate their change logs. Some other people have generated change logs and docs in other ways that work for them. So I think maybe we haven't created a single docs page that's like, and here are the tools that you will use if you're a member of the Ansible community. But maybe that is a gap where we should have more documentation about some examples of different tools that exist out there for those kind of day 2 collection maintainer scenarios, to show people what their options are, even if we're not being prescriptive about them. That's actually a really good point to raise.
Okay. So day 2, we have a lot of good documentation for day 1. Maybe we can improve on day 2. That's great. I'm looking. I want to pause for a moment. I'm looking at the stream right now, and I don't see the slides. As much as I like to look at myself, am I doing something wrong here? Am I
New
still
presenting
sharing
platform. How's it going?
Yeah, I don't see the slides either.
That's odd. Let me try that again.
Are they on another monitor?
It's another window, but I changed the window, so I think when I did that, it broke the thing. It is.
Or maybe I can share the slides so that you can focus on.
Oh, that would be great,
talking.
Carol.
Okay. Let me
send you the link.
Yep.
Well, do we want to go ahead and answer questions out of the IRC while we're waiting?
Yes. Is there any questions yet?
Yes. So how can I make the maintainer's life easier? Because that's the same as how does my patch get merged quicker? Which is not necessarily the same thing. I mean, for me, it's a good commit message, so I know what I'm looking at. And then also, depending on how large the patch is, does it have documentation, a release note, unit test if it's something really, really large? If it's just a quick little change, just knowing why you made that change in your commit message is very handy. So those are some things that I look at to make quicker reviews. How many times do I have to go back to you and ask for things?
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. What I would like to say, so when you send a patch, look at the results of the tests. When you send a pull request, if you look at the results of the CI jobs that run when you send a PR, there's not always one, I guess, but some of those tests you can even run locally before sending your PR, so that when you open up the pull request, the odds are better. The patch is in a better shape. So it's the reviewer and maintainer doesn't need to do as much work. If you can investigate and why the tests are failing and fix that, that's a great help.
I would start even before that. Like, does the repo have a README or a how to contribute file in it, or in the docs for the project? Because that might include things like, what do you look for when you open a pull request against this repo? Are tests required? What type of tests are required? Are unit tests required? Are integration tests required? Is there a syntax checker? Some of that may all be detailed in a README or contributing file. And if you can start there in the documentation before you even open a pull request, that might save you a lot of back and forth once you open that PR and get going through reviews. Thinking like other things to make a maintainer's life easy, like I think you mentioned, just be responsive when you get reviews. If they say like, hey, what are you doing here? Can you explain your thought process? Just try and be responsive to that, but also be understanding that the maintainers might be doing a lot of stuff, and if they don't reply to you in 30 minutes, it's not that they don't care about their patch, it's that they have a lot of things going on, and just try and have empathy for the people on the other side of that review as much as they should have empathy for their contributors. Just everyone kind of be nice to each other.
That's a really good point. And because also, like, the closer to a release, the more patches and things that are coming in at the last minute, so things might get slowed down. And if your patch doesn't necessarily need to go in that release, you might be pushed off to the next release. Do we have anything else we want to say on this, or I'll read the next question?
I think we're good. Let's move on.
Okay. Hi all, I'm looking at Ansible after a very long time and able to see some new features like collections. After taking a glance at the documentation, I came to an understanding that collections are analogous to Docker images and Galaxy.yaml is kind of Docker file. Please correct me whether my understanding is correct. So not really a maintainer type question, but it is a point that if the documentation isn't clear on what things are, that would affect patches.
Yeah, I think we can leave that one for the chat. But broadly speaking, the collections are not, it's not a binary format like a Docker image, right? It's still roles, playbooks, Python files, modules, and plugins. Before collections, you had roles where you could have multiple roles. And then collections, in collections, you can have multiple roles inside a collection, amongst other things like plugins and things like that. So you can package, if you will, things inside a collection and then use that to distribute, the Ansible content. So hopefully,
Okay. So we've got someone asking about non-code contributions, and we can definitely get into that. And then an interesting one is one big repo for the whole collection or one repo per role plus meta repo for the collection. And that's kind of a maintainer type question because how do you organize your project? Do you have everything in one large monolithic one, or like an OpenStack where we have like Nova and Neutron and different ones, and then even in those are broken out into different features and things. Like OpenStack Ansible has a different role and repo for each different thing. So asking more of a question out of that is, how do you recommend a maintainer to organize their things?
I mean, some of that will be personal preference. What you're getting into with, repo full of repos is things like Git submodules. That is going to come down to individual choice because I know there's a lot of folks that have different opinions about the pros and cons of Git submodules. Setting that aside as a personal choice, from the standpoint of collections, the collection is in itself kind of operates like a Python namespace. I know we have a lot of Python developers here, so maybe some folks are familiar with the way that Python namespaces work. So I would try and keep things namespaced appropriately within a collection. You might be in a situation where you want to write, an RPM spec file that can meta install multiple collections, if that makes sense for what you're doing. But I would try and keep collections on their own as individual collections. When it gets to the point of distributing something as an RPM or as a pip package, as an execution environment, there's different ways of packaging those individual collections depending on what your use case is. But I don't think I would do meta collections just because that could get a little confusing from how your users will use them, I believe.
Yep. Along the same lines as what Jill mentioned, do what works best for you. Depending on the use case, sometimes a mono repo will work better. If you have many repos, that there is a non-zero overhead to managing the repos, even if it's just the permissions on the repositories, the settings, where they're located, and so on. So sometimes it's easier to put everything in the single repo. Sometimes it's not. We have seen repositories with more than one collection in the past, but we do not recommend it just because then if you do, if you tag your repository with a release version, then it's the same version for the 3 collections or the 4 collections and so on. It's typically simpler to put, the collections at the root of the repository and just have a single one.
Now, I know we have that non-code contributor question, but I think we kind of talked about it as being one of these points. So, David, do you want to go back to the slide deck?
I would like to elaborate on non-code non-code contributions. Apologies, a little bit though, because I think that's one that we frequently reference, but maybe we don't explain what it is. Non-code contributions are incredibly valuable, especially for a maintainer or someone who wants to be a maintainer. And I know common examples that are given are things like writing docs, testing PRs, but those can also be leadership things within a project or community. Going through and triaging issues and PRs on GitHub. You know, if you're active in a project or a repo and you're thinking about maybe trying to become a maintainer, or you just want to be really active in that repo, just looking at the new issues that come in, looking at the new PRs that come in and looking at, hey, is this a user question that I can just answer and help out? Is this a PR that I can test? Is this a bug report that I can reproduce the bug to verify that it's reproducible? That is hugely valuable. That's stuff that does take up a bunch of time, that needs to get done, that is important to solving those issues that pretty much anyone can come in and do. Same thing, hanging out in the IRC or Matrix channels and answering questions for folks, talking to people who might be new to contributing about how to open a PR, stuff like that. Just being present and active in the community. And you don't have to be the world's best Python developer or something like that to do those types of issues. And that is absolutely things that maintainers do that is critical to the success of a project that I think doesn't get as much kind of attention given to it or talked about, just how important that day-to-day kind of maintenance of the health of the project is.
And it's a great way to join a community by doing those tasks. It's a great way to earn the trust that you'll need as you become more involved in a community, because people know your answers are good, that they can rely on you. I mean, I'm all for non-code contributions. I mean, that's kind of how I get involved in new communities. Yeah, I can go ahead and make some code contributions as well, but there's all those little things like the documentation, because new eyes joining a community and running through your documentation is the best QE you're ever going to get on your documentation.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think Greg just said it in Matrix, that it's really easy for a project with a single maintainer to end up also being a community manager without realizing that they've signed up for that job. And any help with that community management aspect is very welcome and well received.
Yeah, it turns out that running an open source project is not just about code. There are users, there are questions, there's documentation, there's I'm thankful every day for the people that answer questions in the Ansible channels. They do that out of their goodwill, and we appreciate it. But it's also a good opportunity to learn. You won't just be answering questions by being in the channels. You will see other questions. You will see the answers. So you will, just by being there and being in the community, you will learn and gradually build that confidence and become a maintainer if you want to.
And sometimes it's knowing who to make those connections for somebody else. You can't answer that question, but you know someone who can. So you go ahead and make a connection. And that kind of goes back to the community manager aspect that Greg put in the chat. You do start making those connections and helping your community grow, because that's also a role of a maintainer, is making sure there are other maintainers, that there are contributors, that there are users, and that everyone works as a community, that it's not us versus them, which sometimes it can be that, the coders are coding and the users are using and they butt heads all the time. But if you can be that bridge as a maintainer, your community is such a happier place.
I'm looking if we have any questions, or we can move on to something that we have noted.
I think we're caught up.
I'm looking at, I think we're talking a bit about communication and community management, we had talked about maybe going over good code reviews. That's a communication skill. And Amy, I know you do a lot of onboarding for people that are new to this stuff. How do you approach talking to people about how to do an effective code review?
So effective code reviews, you mentioned earlier testing the code, making sure it does work. I mean, yes, someone should do it before their patch is up. Yes, the CI/CD should go through it. But sometimes if it's something that is a physical thing, like I made a fix that fixes a UI or allows this option, well, go ahead and bring that patch down and make sure that functionality exists. Um, but making sure that you do read through everything. Also, sometimes part of a review isn't just looking at the code, but making sure the comments are good within the code, or everything that you consider part of the definition is done is there within the patch. But also making sure that no matter what, don't be negative to people. um, just because the code or the patch may not be perfect, don't rip anybody apart, because you're not going to keep them in your community. I mean, we tell people in OpenStack that -2 isn't necessarily we hate you. It might be that your patch doesn't fit our vision at this time. A -1 is not a bad thing. It just means we have a comment we'd like you to improve on. So making sure that people don't take negative reviews personally, I think is very important. And how you word your reviews helps in that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I tell folks, especially when they're new to reviewing, if they're a new maintainer or new to a project, is it's okay if all your review does is ask questions. Sometimes you look at a patch and you're just like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand this. Don't be a jerk about it. Don't be like, your patch doesn't make sense, but just ask a friendly question. Be like, hey, new contributor, could you walk me through your thought process? And maybe you just need to have a conversation. Um, Sometimes that's the best way to start, is just go into a pull request and ask a question. Hey, can you walk me through what you're doing here? Hey, was there a use case for this? How are you using this? And that can be a really good way to approach starting to review something when you're not sure what's going on, you don't agree with it, you don't really know how to approach it. And even if you've never done code review before, you don't know if the code is good or not, even just driving by the repo and being like, oh, hey, this sounds interesting, but I don't get it. Let me ask a question. You might even learn some stuff that way. So if you're kind of on the path to maybe I'd like to be a maintainer or a more active contributor someday, just going into, bugs and PRs and asking questions to build your own knowledge about the project. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. I need more tea. But yeah, just having conversations with people in PRs can sometimes turn up some really good info, and everyone learns more about it that way. See it. I lost track of the chat while we were talking. Are there any questions in the chat?
I did share. I shared a link on Matrix Code Review Love, how to make your code reviewer fall in love with you. It's a link that I see people sharing every now and then. There's some good advice in there, but I think someone I know used to say, assume positive intent. There might be some red hat smiles here, but basically when you send a pull request, the maintainer likely wants to get your patch in. It's an improvement, it's a bug fix, even if it's just fixing a typo. So when the maintainer or either you as a maintainer or when you're on the receiving end, where whatever the maintainer says is probably in the best interest of the patch, right? So not everyone has great social skills, and not everyone likes to beat around the bush. So be mindful, be understanding, and it should work out.
Yeah, one thing that just came to mind is treat people how you want to be treated. So if you're learning, you want someone to be a little more patient with you than you would, someone who probably knows better, but at the same time, you don't want to be harsh to them either. And like Jill said, those questions are so important, because then you understand where the other person is coming from and where their code's coming from.
And also, it doesn't have to be a lot. Like when you're in the role of the maintainer or a more active contributor in a project who is reviewing other people's code or kind of acting on behalf of the project, you don't have to go on this, gushing kind of high socialization thing. Just making sure that every time you respond on a patch, especially for new contributors, which, GitHub at least will tell you if it's a first-time contributor. There's a little thing that pops up automatically. Just making sure that you start with, hey, thanks for this patch. We really appreciate it. You can even make that be a saved response in GitHub if you don't want to have to type it every time. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just make people feel welcome. And taking that extra 3 seconds to always say, hey, we really appreciate you contributing this, even if it's the 400th review you've done that day, does really make people feel better, makes people feel good about their contributions, that they're getting recognized, and hopefully brings more people to your project. And it can be just as easy as remembering those little things. Like, yeah, maybe I have looked at this bug 400 times, but it's new for every user or a community member that brings it in.
Yeah, be thankful and be grateful for the contributions. People often do it on their own time. They're not paid to do that. Maybe they're using your project and they found an issue, so they took the time to fork the repo, clone it, edit the code, do a commit. So be mindful of that as a maintainer and be thankful for people's time.
I guess I think one of the I think one of the things we wanted to kind of do, there have been a lot of collections that have put out calls for new maintainers lately, and that's kind of why we wanted to run this. We've had a lot of new collections join the Ansible community with new maintainers and newly promoted members of our community as we've been growing. Is there anything that we can say specifically to folks about becoming a maintainer in the Ansible community or stepping up in a collection that folks might be active now, in terms of what that means to them or how to go about it if they've been active in a collection and they would like to maybe be more proactive about becoming a maintainer? I guess I would say in the Ansible community, in some communities, like David and Amy and I all used to be part of the OpenStack community, and Amy still is. And in OpenStack, there's a very formal process for becoming a core. You have to be nominated by an existing core. There's a vote. It's a very structured kind of process. We don't have that in Ansible. In Ansible, especially in the collections that I work in, if you want to be a maintainer and we haven't already said, hey, member of my community, would you be cool if I gave you commit rights on my repos? Just ask. We have a much more informal process. So if you feel like you've been contributing a lot to a particular collection or project within the Ansible community, you probably know who else is active in that part of the code base. Just tap someone on the shoulder on, Matrix or IRC and GitHub and be like, hey, I'm interested in having a little more responsibility. I really care about this project. What would you need from me? And maybe that conversation will be all it takes. There's no formal process for us.
And often what I say to people is just to scratch their own itch. I mean, a lot of open source is about scratching your own itch. You use a project, you run into an issue. Maybe you are able to fix the issue. That's not always the case, but as you do that, you're helping the maintainer basically. So even if it feels like you're just doing stuff for yourself, by contributing it back, everyone can benefit from it. So including the maintainer. So that's important. We are about on time. Let me see if you have any questions in the chat. I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good. So unless there's any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. You can join the multitude of Ansible channels on IRC and Matrix. There's a link there that, if you're watching this from IRC and Matrix, you can disregard that. But we're there. Come and see us and say hi. And I think, oh, yes, I wanted to mention Ampragash had a short presentation earlier, but a lot of the things around Ansible project maintenance you can learn on Instruct. So there's a link there. Free self-paced labs. You can also join the workshops channel on IRC and Matrix. There's going to be people there all week. So it's not just now. You can run and ask questions until Friday. Any last words, Jill and Amy, before we turn it over to Carol?
No, I think thank you both for doing this session with me. And I think everyone's excited to start the Hack Fest. I think that's what we've got. We'll let people get hacking.
Thanks for having me. I really had a good time.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, everyone, and see you around.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jill, Amy, and David. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we've actually come to the end of the kind of pre-arranged sessions for today. But, the day is definitely not over. Like I said, the hackathon will run throughout the day and throughout the week. And the Matrix rooms and IRC channels will be, a lot of us will be online for most of the week as well during our respective time zones. So please continue the conversations and the questions. Keep the questions coming. We'll try to answer as much of them as possible. The workshops room, Matrix room, and IRC channels are available there for hackathon and any questions on Instruct as well. So yes, Gandalo, do you have anything else to add and to wrap things up?
Sorry, I was just grabbing a drink. Perfect time. No, I'm really happy with today. I know virtual events are difficult. People have got the meeting fatigue, but there's been an amazing amount of questions. And it's been really great to see different people in the community sort of answering each other's questions and building those relationships. Because I know it is difficult in virtual events to sort of form to make those friendships and connections, which today's really about. Yeah, keep having a look at the Instruct courses. Thank you to the two people that have given their feedback on the resulting conversations that have happened there. Like I said, we'll get some prizes out to people to give feedback on there, so we'll put the links in chat again. Yeah, have fun with the hackathons. I know we'll sort of be around over the next 4 days. All these IRC and Matrix channels will continue to exist even past the end of the week, so feel free to keep the discussions going there, asking for help. Hopefully you know that we're all a friendly bunch and you can just ask whatever you need to be successful contributing to Ansible. But yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, for the rest of today, hackathons and Instruct Labs as you want to do. Ansible Fest itself starts properly tomorrow. So ansible.com/fest to get your virtual ticket for that. All of these sessions for Ansible Fest and Contributor Summit have been recorded. So you'll be able to watch them all on demand when you'd like. Hope to see a lot of you back here on Friday, starting at 1300 UTC, where we're going to go through part 2 of the Contributor Summit. That's going to be a lot more discussion based. We're going to talk around the different roadmaps that the cloud and network team have, what they're planning on working on. We really want to get your feedback about if you think those things are useful and how they can help you and how we can tweak them. And then we're also going to have some more community-led discussions about how we can improve the community. What are your pain points? What's difficult? We're a bunch of people in all different parts of the globe. How can we improve asynchronous communication? What are the communication flows? What information are you not finding out? So please come armed with your very, very difficult and awkward questions for Friday. That's what we're all about trying to solve. Yeah, thank you very much. Carl, did you have any final comments to wrap us up? I'm not quite sure how we're finishing this bit.
No, I was just looking for the button to stop the stream. Yeah, thanks everyone. We're gonna end the stream now, but as we both mentioned, the conversations are continuing on Matrix and IRC. Cheers.